explanation, I know you've been wondering, how do we get the minimum or the maximum value of a certain expression, a quadratic? So a quadratic expression there, it's got three terms: inner x term variable no2 as the exponent, and then x on 1 as the exponent, and then 5 or constant term. So into ofuna uyenza is that into yokuqala esiyenzayo xa sicomplete i-square, because the only way we get the minimum or the maximum of an expression is by completing the square. Sakubonisa ukuba step by step usicomplete njani i-square se-quadratic expression. But into yokuqala kufuneka uyijongile yokubana i-expression lena, i-x squared term, i-coefficient yakhona, remember i-coefficient is the number before the variable, i-coefficient yakhona injani, positive okanye negative. So in this case i-negative, which would mean ukubana i-function yethu, if let's say besinoyi-sketch the function lena, it would be quadratic expression okanye i-parabola concave doni, a concave down. Khumbula mos i-coefficient ka-x squared xa i-negative ithi loo nto ukuba we have a sad face, right? Yeah, remember, sad face. But then it's sad face, it means ukubana at the top what do we have? We have at the top what we call the maximum value. The maximum value. Lena y coordinate of indoni of a turning point. So that's very important to note. We have the maximum value xa concave down. The sad face gives us a maximum value, all right? Because remember, on the Cartesian plane, all right, why do we say it's the maximum value at the top? Remember, y as opposed to x, y-axis is nika values zethu from the bottom up, whereas the x values is nika values zethu zika x from the left to the right, right? So yazba from the bottom y wethu utheni negative, at the top y wethu njani positive. In fact, positive above the x-axis y, and then negative below the x-axis y. So seeing as that is the case, what we need to do then is to find this y coordinate of the turning point, which gives us what we refer to as the maximum, because if function yet is concave down. By be concave up, then it would mean by a function yet it does not give us a maximum, but at the bottom we have what we call the minimum. Are we together? All right. So seeing as though x squared, coefficient x squared is negative, it would mean that the function is concave down. Therefore, the maximum value. So we need the y coordinate of the turning point. In order to do that, we need to complete the square of the expression. So the first step that we do as complete this square is we take out the common factor, which in this case, a common factor yetu, whenever the first term has a negative coefficient, we take out that negative sign as a common factor. So kopu negative ngaphandle shake nabani no x squared minus 8x plus 5. That's the first step. Take out the common factor. Step 2, we must add half the coefficient. We must add and subtract half the coefficient of the middle term, and then do what? And then square it. All right, this is very important. We add and subtract half the coefficient of the middle term. So let's look at this practically. What does this mean? It means that, okay, I'm just going to complete this because the ballet notes equal to negatives and copying apart. So the x squared minus 8x. Then after negative 8x, we add half the coefficient ka x ngubani negative 8. So we add half times half the coefficient. As it is half the coefficient, it means half times the coefficient of the middle term, which in this case is negative 8. And we do what? We square it. But we not only add, we also subtract the same half the coefficient of negative 8, the whole thing squared. Then kumbula that after that we have plus 5 that needs to feature as well. So by adding half of negative 8, half times the negative 8, the coefficient of the middle term, and then squaring it, minus half times the coefficient of the middle term, kwakhona, and then squaring it. I-addition ne-subtraction yale nto iyi-1 indibuyisela back to i-expression engu-x squared minus 8x plus 5, because this here basically, I mean, we can cancel each other, so we'll back to the expression. So this here does not change, but it allows us to do something that we refer to as completing the square of the expression. Density x squared minus 8x plus, then we have negative 8 ngubani, negative 4 the whole thing squared, minus we have negative 8 ngubani, negative 4 the whole thing squared, plus bani, plus 5. Now talk was the stage. All right, what you get is that you get the trinomial, which is a perfect square trinomial. So I'm going to write that it's a perfect p s square t trinomial, perfect square trinomial. So masijonge nje lento on the side, x squared minus 8x la plus negative 4 the whole thing squared will nika about positive 16. If I was to say factorize the trinomial, what you would do is you would do the following. You would open two brackets, right? Now x squared zomenza ngo-x no-x. If factors zika 16, xa uzimultiplier zikunika 16, but xa uzi-edita zikunika negative 8 zingubani, ku-negative 4 nabani, no-negative 4. So if you think about it practically, this is actually x minus 4 the whole thing squared. So basically this perfect square trinomial PST, because that's the whole point of completing the square of the expression. It's supposed to allow you to have a first three terms which will basically lead you to a formation of a perfect square trinomial. All right, then you saw most how we factorize this thing. So the next step would be 3 factorize the formed PST. Now the simplicity of factorizing the formed PST is the following: minus ungaphandle. Now I'm going to use a square bracket and I'm going to factorize this thing. So when I factorize, I'm going to go straight to the solution and simply say x, this x. Now there's by on x minus 4 the whole thing squared because the bonilemos. But you know what? This x is there. This minus 4 untouched, ungayenza positive 16, ubeskuibhale immediately, and then what you do is you square it. We know that the factorization of this thing here, which is x squared minus 8x plus 16, leads us to x minus 4 into x minus 4, which is actually x minus 4 the whole thing squared. So we've just simplified it for ourselves by basically putting the x here, and then the minus 4 untouched, after the have a show negative 8 with the sign. Take the minus form fuck up. We are by factorization and the trinomial gagadi is actually to this anyways. Okay, this is just a simple way of getting to the answer. Then trinomial has been taken care of. Now factorization. What's left over is this part. So your saibala is minus into minus 4 the whole thing squared in positive 16 plus bani plus 5. Okay. Then I'm just going to put a square bracket in there just to distinguish between the bracket and the actual bracket for the entire expression. Then singalibelanga minus into x minus 4 the whole thing squared. What's minus 16? Minus 16 plus 5. Obviously minus 16 plus 5 that's nikabani. Okay. Minus 16 plus 5 gives us negative 11. Right? Then that's la minus into. Now we are going to take this negative sign and distribute it. There are two terms. So minus can distribute to x minus 4 unikabani minus into x minus 4 the whole thing squared. Then minus can distribute negative 11 leads me to positive 11 because the negative times the negative gives me a positive 11. This here is what I call an expression now written in the form a into x plus p the whole thing squared plus q, where q here will give me either the mean or the max depending on coefficient kabani ka x squared. So in this case A, which basically tells me about the shape of my function, which I said is concave down, which gives me the maximum. Therefore, A wam ndiyamazi uba utheni negative, which means ndine maximum apha. But the maximum value yam inikwa ngubani? Inikwa yilaa value kabani? Katyu. Xa i-function expression in this form. Nanku utyu wam ngubani? Positive 11. So the maximum value yam is equal to bani? To 11. And the x value that gives me la 11 or maximum is when x equal to bani? To 4. All I did, I took this expression, equated it to 0. When x is equal to 4, that is when my maximum value, which is the y value, is actually bani? 11. So this is how you complete the square and get the maximum or the minimum.